Welcome, Max, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Exist, this new album, this new album, hijacking the Zeitgeist. Well, Zeitgeist is German name, Zeitgeist, and also more things related to the metal world in general. So we can start by asking, how has the band been during the last 4 years? Because your previous album, Egoísta, was released in
Mhm.
2020 at the beginning of the pandemic, and now we have this new album, this fourth album.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. So it's been good over the last 4 years. We didn't really play live at all after Egoista just because of it came out right in the midst of COVID, and so by the time things were kind of opening up in a way where we would be able to, we were so far along on making this album that it made more sense for us probably just to wait. But yeah, everything's been good. We've been working despite being quiet. We've constantly been at it. So we're excited that this one is out now.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Well, I remember. We will talk about a little more about the history of the band because I remember the bands appeared in 2013 with Sunlight, an album
Mhm.
that for some people are great, but for other kind of people, I remember because at that era, the technical progressive death metal or whatever metal they want to put the people. So there is like a lean down to a lot saturated. A lot of bands appear at that time. I remember very well that era. So for you, how was now the started of the band at that time? Because I think a lot of people hate in some ways this first album, but at the same time, a lot of people love that album.
Hate's a strong word. Yeah, I mean, I could see where maybe it's a lot for a lot. It's a lot of information. It's a dense album, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was the honest thing to do at the time. We worked a really, really long time on those songs, and we spent a really, really long time making that album and creating that album. And we played those songs a lot as a band in a room together beforehand. So, it's still something we love. Like, I wouldn't change anything about it. We're obviously doing some pretty different things now. I mean, I guess, it would have been cool if we could have made the production a little better, but we were, young and kind of new to that. And the methods that we used at the time, made that a little tougher to get a clear mix out of it. So, but yeah, I mean, we worked on that album for a long time. We had an EP before that that had some overlap in the material called In Mirrors in 2010. And that was kind of I guess in some ways, the birth of, that lineup and that evolution of the band. There was actually an album that we recorded before that that net is you can't get it, it's not available, but and by the time we were kind of putting it out, or would have been putting it out, the band had evolved and the personnel had changed a lot. So yeah, we've been at it for a while. And all the albums I think are a little bit different, but that's intentionally, and we want to keep changing and doing new things and just doing whatever excites us. So
Okay, yeah, that's right. Because when I hear Sunlight, it's more like literally is your first album, etc., for this aspect. Then when appears So True, So Bound, it's very different from the first one. Then the third one,
yeah.
very different. And now this album is more catchy, and a lot of things more catchy.
Mhm.
A little more death metal. Because when I hear for
Yeah.
the first three, it's not like death metal; it's more progressive metal in general. But with this
Yeah.
new album, you incurs or you gather a lot of extreme metal. So in
Mhm.
this aspect, how was the composition process of this hijacking the zeitgeist? Perhaps it has to do with the where you're because you are touring with the death to all. Who knows? Because more influence to the dead side.
I don't necessarily. I mean, the thing is, I was doing that for all of those albums. Like when Sunlight came out, I was uh, even when we were recording Sunlight, was when I started doing Death to All, and you got to consider like that was already a huge influence before that. So like the material that we recorded before Sunlight was also very death metal, and it just again that was stuff that didn't really see the light of day, but so I don't necessarily think it's just directly because of that, but we just wanted to make a heavier album, and also just something that was, we started using seven strings, which was something that I was always interested in doing, but just, I'd just always been a six stringer up until then. And yeah, I think we wanted to make more concise songs. We wanted to make songs that, I mean, pop is a
Mm.
sort of, I'm sure people wouldn't consider it pop, just in the broad sense of the word, but just in terms of like song structures with that were a little more traditional. They're still step pretty out there, but and yeah, just kind of more deliberate choruses and things like that. So and yeah, the heaviness, I think part of it was just using the seven strings, and then part of it was just wanting to make these more direct kind of songs, that in which maybe that kind of takes over the language a little bit more. But I don't know if it's a direct result of just being influenced by like, because again, all those bands already were influences. Same with like Defeated Sanity. Us working with, we were working with those guys back when we were doing like, Egoista and So True So Bound. So I think it's, yeah, I don't know. It's just what we wanted to do this time.
Hmm? Okay, okay. Well, you are working with Prosthetic Records for one, for 2 albums and 3 albums, I think. So,
Yep.
so how was your experience to work with one? Well, I think Prosthetic has a good label, as a good label with good bands, good releases. So, how was the
Yeah.
working with them since 2017?
It's been good. Yeah, I really really like their A&R Steve Joe, who's the guy that we usually work with directly. I think he's a really solid guy, and he's really gone to bat with us with certain things. So yeah, it's been pretty good. I think it's been pretty smooth sailing, and pretty much has been what I would expect of things. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, one thing that I love about the evolution of Exist, when I remember here Sunlight, especially from the cover art, Sunlight
Mhm.
has a basic cover art. Since through So Bound, you decide to create more space, more science fiction cover arts. Then Egoista, like more universe, and now you are trying to hack the zeitgeist. That's interesting point to see. So for this aspect. So, how was the evolution to create the cover art in Exist? Do you think the cover art is still presenting different things in each album?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the artist that we work with, at least for these last three, his name is Sebastian Jurke. I think it's pronounced. He's German, and we have a pretty good working relationship in terms of I'll give him a concept that's related to the lyrics, and sometimes he's even reading the lyrics as well, so that we can kind of bounce the ideas off of each other. Um, so those covers always kind of pertain to themes that are within that, and there's usually like a wider concept that I'll sort of feed to him, and then yeah, we sort of bounce the ideas off of each other. So the process for the last three albums has been pretty similar. I would even say with the original artist Brandon Gertz for Sunlight, it wasn't so different than that either, because we still had the concept of the general outline of what that was. It's just he was a very different artist aesthetically in terms of and so it kind of got a, yeah, darker result that was maybe a little less psychedelic looking. But yeah, I think for these last three, like with Sebastian, we have a pretty specific way of working together, and the concepts are a little different, of course, but yeah, it's yeah, I don't know. I really like what we have with that, just because it's, yeah, I can give him kind of this broad idea and he gets really into it, and we have a lot of correspondence regarding that. So
Mm, okay. Well, talking about now as you can see, we are living in a world that prefer to hear the music by singles. Now, this is the new wave to hear. Well, I
yes,
don't think it is. I don't think it is the new wave. It's the retro movement because in the
yeah,
40s and 50s, the music spread just by singles at that time. Now
right,
we are
right, right.
returning to that era. So for me, as I mentioned, as I did in the review, it's a great album, more stronger, more heavy in many ways, a lot of progressive, technical, etc., a lot of jazz also. So, but
Uh-huh.
with this album, for me, it's very difficult. Like I'm 44,
Yeah,
for me, it's very difficult to say, hey, this song is much better than the previous one, etc., etc. Even the people think still now like that. But for you, you are the composer, you are the writing. For you, which song or songs capture whole texture layers are essence that this album has. But before, obviously, know the usual singles that you present on the YouTube now. So no,
right.
perhaps you have other single that represent much better this album, or perhaps two singles. Who knows?
Like which ones would I pick?
Yes.
Well, I mean, Blue Light Infinite seemed like to me the best choice just because it kind of covers a lot quickly, and it covers the whole range of things that we do. In like a pretty deliberate way. I mean, honestly, like when we were writing the album, we kind of wanted to make an album that almost like any song could be a single. And I kind of feel like that's true for it. So I mean, I think we could have released probably any of them as singles. Uh, I mean, I think Window to the All is pretty cool for, in terms of what it represents for that. But I even think like Funeral Toll, which, that wouldn't make a good first single because it doesn't have the heavy stuff as much, but I still feel like it could be a single. Um, I think Path to Nowhere could be as well. So yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to choose. I mean, I think Light Infinite, there's a reason it was the first and really only single that we ended up, using. But I do think that a lot of other ones could be. And if you asked everyone else in the band, they might have different opinions on that too. So
Hmm, okay, okay. Well, talking about the promotion for this new album, what kind of promotion do you have for this hijacking the Saigots? Perhaps you will embark to a little shows, tours in Europe, US, because with that tour and the other and signing that you play as a live musician, you have a lot of contacts to play with exist in a lot
right.
of countries.
Yeah, well, we definitely want to. The challenge is really just the financial part of it, because it's the band doesn't really make much money. So I mean, we want to tour. I think I see us probably trying to predominantly tour in the States, but it's solely because of, at least right now, but it's solely because of the financial component, because it's cheaper for us to tour here, and we lose less. But yeah, I mean, we'd love to play anywhere we can. It's really just a question of, yeah, can we make it feasible, and then do the offers kind of come in? Because I think despite having those contacts, at the end of the day, people have to be listening to the music for a promoter to really want to take you and take on a tour with you. So I mean, we want to tour, we want to play as much as we can. But yeah, again, it's just trying to make it a reality based on like the financial component is the challenge, and being able to get on tours is challenging as well. So anything we can do, we want to do with regards to that. Beyond like other promotion, I mean, a lot of it is just making content and trying to do that. So, if we get a tour opportunity, the hope is that we could get something, I'm about to do a pretty large Death to All tour, but the whole time after that, for the rest of the year, we would hope that we can get something and yeah, get out there and play some shows. We did get to play the Hijacking the Zeitgeist material a little bit before it came out, because we did a few shows with the band Gorod
Mhm.
in January. So we played a bunch of those songs already,
Okay.
before anybody knew them, and it went over really well. So yeah, we'd like to do that more. So yeah, it's just getting the opportunities for that really right now.
Mhm. Okay, and when talking about a little beyond, especially in your career as a musician, an interesting detail that is all the musicians who are in exist, you are the most requested in the extreme war, and you play with legends of the style, Glenn Hogan, Stevie Giorgio, Paul Masvidal. You play with the legends
Yeah,
of the extreme metal
yeah.
in general. So how does it feel to play with these legends? Because nobody, no, no, it's not usual that a new guy play with the legends of the style. It's very difficult sometimes.
Sure. Well, the one thing I will say, just to your first comment, I don't actually think I am the most requested. I think our drummer Brody plays in a band that's bigger than any of the bands that we're in. So he plays in a band called Invent Animate right now, and he gets called constantly. So he's toured with a lot of he's really become a and I would say the same as of Alex Weber, who he's playing with Obscura now, and he's playing he gets a lot of requests to like fill in and stuff. So those guys are pretty in demand. But to answer your question, I guess the question was more just about like what is it like playing with those guys
Yes,
with the kind of legendary musicians.
yes.
I mean, it's great. It's a lot of fun. Obviously, all of those guys are guys that I idolized, in my younger age. And those Cynic and Death are like two of my favorite bands. So, um, it's amazing getting the opportunity to do that. And on top of that, they're all really great people. They're like people that I really consider to be friends. So it's the personal dynamic is very easy with both of those situations. So yeah, I'm very grateful to be able to do that, and it's a lot of fun, and it's awesome playing with all of those guys.
Mm. Okay, okay. During these things to play with well that to all,
Hmm.
perhaps in some ways, or perhaps with Cynic, perhaps in some ways they propose to create an album with both bands, because who knows? There are a lot of people. It's obviously no Chuck in there, but they're all musicians that play sometimes in that, and perhaps like the common question, perhaps like funny joke. Hey, why we not create a new album with the name Dead to All? No, not just that. How do you
Right.
think about it?
Um, it's we'll talk about it like every so often, but it's not. I think everybody's so busy, and we're all just kind of like doing these different things that I don't think it's impossible. Um, but also like it might sound like something totally different, so it might be one of those things that because it would obviously would be the writing would be a lot different than like something Chuck would have done. So I think it could be cool to do. But I also, I mean, I have no idea what the dynamic, it's a lot different, like, um, getting everybody together and just playing these songs where there's no question about what happens. There's not really no opinions really come into play for the most part. It's just, we just try to do our best job playing those songs, and that's very easy on a personal level for us all to do. So we have no idea. I think none of us know even what that would be like, like what the writing would be like or anything like that. So, it's not, I would say it's probably not impossible, but it's not really something like we're thinking about right now. And I think especially just with everybody being, everybody in these bands is so busy. So yeah, who knows though? I mean, maybe
Yeah, thanks.
we do get the
Okay.
question, people do ask. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. You've been playing that songs for over 10 years, especially with Dead to
Hmm.
All. And
Yeah.
with this question, obviously, as you can see, a lot of magazines also we did a dead ranking for which album is the best for that media. We think that the Leprosy is the best album. Other media say that it's Sound of Perseverance. And for you, you are playing songs for more than a decade. So
Yeah.
which album from that for you is the best work from Chuck and company?
I mean, I think my favorite is Symbolic. Um, but I also think like if you asked me to pick my favorites from the whole discography, I would probably take stuff off of every album. So if you ask me songs, I like stuff from all over. And I have favorites kind of scattered all over. But I think like as an overall album, I would say Symbolic.
Okay, something that you mentioned at the beginning is at the beginning of the Exist when Exist was created, you decide to play with 7 strings, but now you decide to play with 6 strings. So what do you for you? A lot of people think that on the 6 strings or 8 strings like Meshuggah produce the
Yeah.
natural sound of the gen, because
Yeah.
normally the notes etc are more heavy with the seven
Yeah.
strings or 8 strings. But why
Right.
do you decide to return in your compositions with a 6 strings and not still working with a 7 or 8 strings?
Oh, well, actually, this album, Hijacking the Zeitgeist, is all seven strings.
Mhm.
Um, but it's the first time we've ever done seven strings. Like none of the older albums. The old albums were all six strings.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, I mean, yeah. So this is the first time we've used seven strings on an Exist album. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of bands that do that, and I think it opens up some possibilities to for the heavy stuff comes a little easier, like with the sevens. So that's the main reason I think. There's a lot of like yeah, we're big fans of Meshuggah, we're big fans of Strapping Young Lad, and all these kind of bands that like tune down. And I think it just kind of opens the door in terms of this other option. Because of the range thing, because you can still play stuff that's higher up, and our keys aren't always that we play in aren't always dictated just by the instrument. But yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like a fun thing to do to kind of go heavier and yeah, just have that option.
Okay, okay, interesting to know. Well, we are one of the last questions to end this interview, Max. As one
Hmm.
thing that I always love about the music from Exist is
Hmm.
that your sound is more organic. I mean, when you hear perhaps bands like Obscura, you hear bands like the Necrophagies, well, this
Sure,
kind of bands has more, I don't know, technology involved, more
sure.
clean, more so not no more clean, more pumped sound into the sound. But when I hear the four albums, you have some more organic, like you are trying to preserve the 90s sound created by
Yeah,
80s, Nocturnus, Death, etc., Cynic, etc. You try to bring back that sound within studio. That's
yeah,
a good thing to see the music because it's not like when you can hear Lorna Shore. Lorna Shore is all full volume and you don't understand the notes, just
sure.
like noise, just noise. But when I hear Lexis, you put a lot of details into produce with the recording, with the guitars, bass, especially in this new album. The presence of the drummer is more bigger than the previous ones. I
Hmm.
denote a lot of things with the drummer in this aspect. You have more space with the drummer and the bass. So for you, what you try when you mix the album, when you record the album, so what are you focused to create a more organic thing than like the bands now, like the symphonic deathcore with a lot of overwhelming sound, this kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
I don't know. I think it's just how we play. Like we're not really like I think despite what people think, we've never really been a we've never thought of ourselves as like a 90s throwback band, like it's just kind of then I think the natural thing is just kind of typically how we play it. And I mean actually this album's a little more produced in terms of that. But yeah, I mean, we also want it to be something that's realistic that we know we can pull off live and whatnot, and I think we all just play our instruments a lot, so we want it to feel fairly natural just because we want it to kind of encompass what we can do or like what our ideal performance would be. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think it's just how we kind of naturally are and how it naturally comes out. I don't think it's actually something we like think too much about. Like I don't really have a problem with more produced stuff either, but it's just not how we do things as much.
Okay, well, now one of the last questions. Now, speaking of many bands that change the wheels of the train within extreme metal. As a
Hmm.
fans that you and me are for the metal in general, so we
Hmm.
have one or two bands that didn't deserve the credit they should get today. So I
Hmm.
mean, so the bands that perhaps you have a no band or perhaps a minor band that perhaps changed the wheel, but nobody knows about these aspects. So for you, which band for you deserves more than the well-known bands especially into the technical or progressive or death metal in general for you? Like because for
Sure.
me, one of the biggest bands that never was a huge impact was Bolt Thrower. Bolt Thrower is not
Oh, okay,
it's
sure.
not in the same status like the Cannibal Corpse, like Deicide, like the Carcass is not in the same status. When you speak with the Bolt Thrower is like a band that changed something, but it's not huge as a Cannibal Corpse or Deicide.
Sure. I mean, for more modern stuff, I'd say maybe the band Sixth, but I
Mhm.
think they've kind of gotten more recognition since like some of the gentier stuff has kind of taken off. But they were like one of the big innovators of that still isn't as known as some of the like kind of leading bands of that, I would say. So yeah, I mean, I would say Sixth, and I mean, I would put Cynic in that category still. Um, for like old school stuff, I mean, if you're talking like old school death metal bands, maybe like Monstrosity. I feel like that's some pretty hip
Okay.
stuff. Yeah. And there's probably some other ones I could think of that are like that, but I don't know. There's a band that Dirk Van used to play in called Scarve that I think is really great. That I feel like
Yeah.
didn't. I don't know if you know Scarve, but I feel like
Yes,
that never
yes,
got
from France.
a
Yeah.
ton of recognition. So maybe that's a cool example of like a progger band. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff like that just because there's so much great stuff that kind of gets overlooked, I think. So,
Okay, okay. Well, Max, the sad times arrive at this interview. I hope you enjoy this one like me. I love this new record. It's a great one, as usually. The band is very, very solid with all albums. So perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans and obviously Metallican followers?
um, just check out the album, and I hope you guys dig it. You know, that's probably the main thing I would say. So yeah.